No challenge poses a greater threat to our future and future generations than a changing climate.
That may pose a risk because if sea levels are rising, it may mean that we get over flooding of land here, and we may lose that land for other purposes. The question is this really going to happen? At this stage, I'm much more worried about the impact of climate emergency on coral and the survival of marine life than on the actual existence of the island. Pollution, in particular plastics pollution, is one of the key issues in the Maldives at the moment.
Hi everyone, it's Arif. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but if you want to check out the first part of the first episode, click here. Thank you for hearing me out, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Every week we're seeing new and undeniable climate events, evidence that accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying, with methane plumes rising up from the ocean floor. We are seeing extreme weather events and the West Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections.
So science tells us that we have 10 years to take action on climate change. Just 10 years. I'm taking a stand because this is happening, and it's happening right now. In each of our foreseeable futures, not for the next generation, but right now, we are going to personally experience this catastrophe unless we take action now. So join us in the conversation and let's take some steps towards reversing these effects before it's too late.
People and a lot of articles are saying that there will be empty oceans by 2048. Is that true? And what can be done to stop that, not let it happen?
Well, I think there is sufficient evidence, there's sufficient research that has been done to add credibility to the statement that you just made. So if we are not careful, if as mankind we are not going to look very critically at what we're doing with the oceans and how we are emptying the oceans of fish to feed this growing global population of people, if we are not careful, then we're just gonna destroy our own source of survival. And obviously, as you know, 70% of the world's planet is actually oceans, is water, right? Land surface is much less. So if we don't look after the marine ecosystem, we're going to lose a dramatic source of protein to feed the human population. And we can only do that if we make sure that major chunks of that 70% of the global surface become protected areas. There's a lot of say from the experts that say, well, we should at least protect 1/3 of the marine world to make sure that we sustain enough biodiversity so that we're not destroying it by over-exploiting it. So 1/3 of the global surface area of the ocean should turn into protected area. That would be a really good start to prevent that by 2050 the oceans are empty.
Okay, that was interesting. What does sustainable fishing mean?
Sustainable fishing in the strictest sense means that what you take out is not moving in the direction of depleting it. So if what you consume is ultimately over time being replaced, that's sustainable fishing. Okay, so you're making sure that not over time your populations keep on declining in size, but that you keep them always at a more or less at a stable level. That's sustainability in the strictest sense of the world. Don't take out more than you can put back into it, or that can regrowth by itself. That's
Do you feel there's a need to promote organisations that recommend people to eat more sustainable seafood?
Definitely. There is not the slightest doubt that, I mean, what we're seeing around the world is that there's more and more people moving away from eating meat that has been produced in factories, okay, where, like when we're talking about beef or when we're talking about pork or chicken, that a lot of the production methods that we're using for these animals, there's a lot of opposition against that. So the bio industry is is coming under pressure. And because of that, there's a lot of people that are moving away from consuming meat to consuming fish. Yet, at the same time, people have to understand that we should not all move to fish, because then we start over consuming fish, and then we are depleting fish populations, which means that we're still ending up with a massive problem, because we end up with empty oceans. So I think the solution basically is that more and more, as we are moving away from consuming meat, that we should not be replacing every meal the meat with fish, but that we should just start consuming less fish. So that you would say, rather than eating 5 times a week, I'm eating fish, that you're just eating it on 2 days. Okay, and the rest, we are moving more and more towards vegetarian meals, because that's more sustainable. So that ultimately, over time, fewer and fewer people in the world are depending on those sources of protein, but are moving much more in the direction of plant-based protein.
Yeah. Okay. What do you feel about the Marine Stewardship Council?
I think there's a lot of organizations at the moment that are recognizing the need to start doing something about the preservation and conservation of marine resources. So there's a myriad of initiatives. There's a lot of organizations that, wherever they are in the world, they're trying to do good for the marine environment. And I would not specifically want to highlight one, because I think all of them have their merit. Some of them are focusing on a single species or group of organisms. Think of the organizations that focus on sea turtle protection, or think on the organizations that focus on whale shark or manta ray protection. Others focus more on ecosystems as such. Okay, so each of these organizations are having their own specific focus, but each of them merit their existence because they're all trying to make sure that collectively we ensure the future of our marine ecosystem. And there is no doubt, as you mentioned before, that if we don't do this, if we don't join forces, if we don't join hands and all work together, that we're going to end up with empty oceans by 2050. And of course, nobody wants that.
Okay. David Attenborough said that the question is that, are we happy to suppose that our grandchildren may never be able to see an elephant except in a picture book? Do you think this is an actual reality, and do you agree with that?
I think there is, for anyone on the planet, very little reason to doubt whatever David Attenborough says. I can be very brief in that. I think that what this man has contributed to nature conservation and our understanding of the natural world in the decades that he's been at it, I mean, he has become such an authority. Whatever he says, you can be 100% certain that it has been properly researched. He's not just saying things for the sake of saying things. Everything that he portrays, everything that he says in front of camera, I can almost guarantee you, because of his reputation, that people have made sure that what he says is actually true, and there's evidence to back these statements. So if he says that we have to be very careful as mankind to look into the future in order to ensure that our grandchildren can still see an elephant in the wild, then I believe he has all the right to say so. I mean, taking an elephant as a species, if you're looking at what has happened to elephant populations around the world in the last 5 decades, and if I portray that against the thousands of years, the tens of thousands of years that this animal has been roaming our planet, if I now take what we have done to this species in the last 50 years, there's no reason to doubt that if we continue in the same way, poaching this animal for its ivory, that it will go extinct. It will go extinct. Species will go extinct. And as we speak, there are thousands of species going extinct without us even noticing it. And I'm talking not about the tigers, and I'm not talking about species like the panda, iconic species like elephants and God knows what. I'm talking about the little creepy crawlies that, as we are just hacking away hectares every so many minutes of tropical rainforest, that we are just taking out species that we have not even ever known to exist. And I think that is a really sad thing. There's so much biodiversity out there. We have no clue of that it's even there. And we don't even understand what these species could bring us. Because there's no doubt that there are organisms out there or plants out there in the jungle that may give us drugs against some of the major illnesses that we're trying to battle. Think diabetes, think cancer, think of these ailments that we have, where because of our destruction of biodiversity, that we will lose all of that opportunity to make use of these plants for the betterment of mankind. And that's what happens when we are destroying biodiversity. So David, as you can imagine, I hugely admire and respect this person for everything that he's done, and there's little doubt that he's saying the truth.
Okay. He also said that many individuals are doing what they can, but real success can only come if there's a change in all of our societies and in our economics and in our politics. In your opinion, where does responsibility lie, in your view, with us all government?
There is again, I think there's no doubt that the responsibility for sustaining a future planet, making sure that the generation and the next generation after that have a planet that is suitable to live on, is a responsibility of all of us. Now, I think what we should not forget is that there is still a large proportion of the world's population, human population, of people that have a priority to just survive. These are people that have to move from one day to the next, making sure that there's enough food on the table for themselves, for feeding their children, for getting some little income so that they can pay the school fees for the children. There's a large chunk of the human population that is not in a luxurious situation where they can break their head and spend time thinking on how we preserve the environment. I think it's only once we start to realize, mostly in the Western world, because let's not forget, the vast majority of all the pollution, of all the destruction, of all the contribution to carbon emissions, the vast majority of all of that is coming from developed nations. It's not coming from low and middle income countries, or developing countries as we call it. It is the rich countries that have made us come in the situation where we are, where we really have to start thinking of changing what we do. So I would say, let's start with the richer part of the world. Let's get more equity around the world. In other words, the share of contribution to reducing the impact that we have on the planet should be in parallel to what a country is doing in contributing to the destruction of it. So the more you destroy, the more you should also contribute to making sure that we reverse the trend. And if there are countries like sub-Saharan countries that hardly have any contribution in terms of carbon emissions, countries should not be held responsible for making sure that we reverse that trend. So the more you pollute, the more you destroy, the more you should also put in to reversing that trend. And I think the richer countries are perfectly capable of putting in lots and lots of money into conservation and making sure that we keep climate emergency under control. And we've seen this. We've seen this because in the last year, since the beginning of 2020, when the world is battling COVID-19, we have seen how much money that can be available, an issue that suddenly affects us all. COVID was a great example, showing the world that we can only tackle issues if we collaborate and we all get together. And the amount of money that has been made available to develop, for instance, vaccines, to produce vaccines, to roll out vaccines, the amount of money that individual nations have pumped into their economies to keep them going in spite of being in lockdowns, et cetera, shows the power of what we can do if we want to. So the individuals that you were talking about in the beginning of your question, the four fighters, the people that get to the forefront in battling for a future for our planet, those are the people that will hopefully trigger that governments start to realize that we have to allocate a lot more financial resources into conservation and into sustainability efforts. And in that way, there is certainly a future.
Okay, do you have any final words for the next generation on what can be done to preserve the environment?
I would say, let me give you a compliment. Let me start with that. I think what you're doing right now is a great example of what young people like yourself, what you can do. I mean, you've started, I mean, clearly I can realize from the way you're asking your questions. I understand that you've done some research, you've been going online. In your first episode, you were looking at cruelty against animals. Again, I could see very clearly that you've been researching. I think a key message that comes out from what you're doing with your YouTube channel is that you are an example, a beautiful example of what any young person in this world can do today. And that is to go online and start doing research and get a better understanding of what is happening in the world, so that we can then also, get to a future generation, you, when you grow up and you start to work, that has a full understanding of what problems we as a world that we need to tackle in order to sustain a good future for all of us. So in that sense, my message is to you, great job. I think you're doing a fantastic job in this.
Thank you.
And I would say if other youngsters like you would start doing the same thing, start to develop a keen interest in what's going on with the planet, and an interest normally spurs an interest to do something. If you understand what it's all about, then you start to develop a passion for it. And once you develop a passion for it, you will get into action. You join a nature club, or you join an initiative, or you join an organization that is moving into nature conservation and making all of these small steps. The more young people do that, the better our future will be. There's no doubt.
The last video I did got 28,000 views, and I realised that if you mention or talk about celebrities in any way, it boosts the video up. I feel that's important because it gets the message out there, and that's why I decided to ask you these couple of questions to end the interview. The first question I had for you was, how do you feel videos like this and celebrities such as Richard Branson, Leonardo DiCaprio, Chris Hemsworth, Georgia May Jagger, Pierce Brosnan, Jack Johnson, January Jones, and James Cameron are helping create awareness for the plight of the ocean?
I think that these celebrities, I think they actually have a very important role to play. So if you take people like Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, most people will remember him from his movies. But if somebody like that starts to speak up for the environment, and that we have to look after our planet, and that we have to manage climate change and all of these things, then they have a lot of followers, a lot of people listen to what they have to say. Sometimes I have the feeling that they even listen more to people like Leonardo DiCaprio than to their own politicians. Sometimes people get fed up with listening to their own politicians because they don't believe them anymore and what they promise and that they never fulfill. But when there is celebrities that pick up an issue and they start working hard in moving change forward, then sometimes it happens. And these are the kind of people that have the networks. These are the people that have the social media. These are the people that have cameras in front of them. So I would say the more celebrities that we get behind our cause in looking after the planet, the better it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I also had another question. So that was, which celebrity do you feel is doing the most? And how do you feel that that person can be doing better?
If you're asking me who is doing really well as a celebrity, the first name that automatically pops in my mind, and I've mentioned his name before during your interview, is Sir David Attenborough. I mean, this man is an icon. He has become the equivalent of conservation in the world. I mean, for more than 50 years, he's been at it. I think he's known by everyone around the world. The sad thing is that, like all of us, we're becoming older. And so he's also becoming older. I just saw him talking in COP26, the big climate change conference that is there in Glasgow. where he gave a fantastic speech. But the man is, what, 93, 94? So we need younger people. We need a new generation of people with a similar kind of influence. And that's why I think that younger celebrities, singers, artists, people that play in movies, actors, that they should pick up where this former generation, leaves it and carry that flag of conservation. I mean, we desperately need more people to carry the flag of conservation. It's critical. I mean, it's really critical as we speak. So the more of them that do it, and they take examples in the way people like David Attenborough have been living their lives and making people aware of conservation and the importance thereof, the better.
How do you feel how do you think that David Attenborough can be doing better?
I think that's a difficult question that you ask me. You're asking me, how can David Attenborough do better? Maybe, but I would not be surprised if he's not already doing that. It would be great if he would have a small group of people around him that he would be training to become sort of multipliers of who he is. I think that would be fantastic. Maybe he can set up a class where he's training young conservationists like you, okay, people that feel for the planet, and that he's encouraging you and he's opening doors, because these are people that can open doors anywhere. I mean, for me, it is difficult to open doors. But if you have somebody like David Attenborough knocking on the door of the president of a country, that door will go open. So if he can facilitate younger people to get doors opened, I think that would be a fantastic contribution that perhaps he can make before, unfortunately, we will lose him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because he's already really old. So if other people can help other people do what he's doing, he can make the world a better place later after he passes away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. It was really nice doing that.
That's it?
Yep, that's all.
Perfect, man. I look forward to seeing it.
Yep.
Send me an email once it's done.
Yep, I will. Yep.
I look forward to seeing it. And please say hi to your family.
Yes, I will.
All right?
Yep.
Okay, all the best.
Okay, thank you.
Care,
Bye.
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 Science tells us that we have 10 years to take action on climate change. I'm taking a stand because I want to protect the future for my children and future generations.